Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Elemed's Future Leaders series. This episode focuses on looking inwards. I'm super excited because we have 4 amazing guests on this show talking about how to develop self-awareness, getting and giving feedback, emotional intelligence, and how to balance vulnerability and authenticity. Let me talk to you about our amazing guests. Firstly, we had Fred Bustos, Senior Director of Regulatory and Quality for EMEA and LATAM at Stryker. He's looking after 40 countries and a team of over 120 people all over the world. Then we had Dave Glasgow, who is the Director of Quality for EMEA Commercial Operations at Bio-Rad, a company of 10,000 people based out in the US, Dave sitting in Munich, Germany. Before that, he worked at Philips and GE Healthcare, some very well-known companies. We also had Rekha Roveri, Director of Global RA for Mozarc Medical, which is a company that was acquired by Medtronic. Her team is based in EMEA and also in APAC, and she's leading and looking after both an active and non-active product portfolio. And finally, we had Lacey, Gigante, Director of Post-Market Surveillance at Integra. Their products span neurosurgical devices and tissue technology, and Lacey is leading teams across the US and Europe, making her role a truly global one in a global organization supporting 14 manufacturing sites across the world. Enjoy the episode. So wow, I think we've got really great coverage, really great diversity, and a very broad set of skills and real global leadership experience here on this panel. So thank you very much to everybody for jumping on this session. Now, this is a session that I know connected with each of you individually as something that is really important, this theme of looking inwards, and I'm really excited to dig in a little bit more detail around what that really means for you guys. But I guess I'd like to start firstly with a broad question that I'd like to put to all of you, that is, what is one thing that in your opinion makes a leader great at looking inwards? I'll pass that maybe to Fred to start with.
Very much. That's a great question. I think, to me, I was thinking about that. It's really a leader who realize why self-awareness is important. We all know that, but it's the realization of what it is so important. And it's so important because social interactions, which are the base of everything, are really not possible without a deep understanding of these foundations. Who am I? How do I communicate? How do I interact with others? And it's only then that you can really start understanding how you influence, how you work as a team, etc., etc. And I really love this model. Often that in my mind, thinking about emotional intelligence and seeing that a bit as a ladder. And you can only climb these steps one by one. And the first step would be really self-awareness, which is why it's so important. You really want to understand your emotion. After that, you can go to self-management, how you self-control, adaptability. Next step really is the social awareness, how you understand others, empathy, and these things. And finally, the mastery, once you have all of these, the relationship management. So really being able to influence, to manage conflict, to work as a team, to be an inspirational leader. So really, to me, it's a great leader is the leader who understands why she or he is looking inward and why this is so important.
Thanks, Fred. So it's really about having that real key understanding of why it's important as well, and being able to take that first step. Dave, what about you?
That is a great question. I worked at GE Healthcare for about 14 years in America. And the CEO at that time, Jeffrey Immel, said something which I'll never forget. He said, leadership is this intense journey into yourself. And to your question, the one thing that I think reaches over everything else isn't courses and training and checklists and self-personality tests and quizzes. It's, do we have the innate desire to learn and grow and develop in such a way that we have a profound impact upon ourselves? We also have a profound impact upon other people. And in that process, motivating other people through our own self-awareness to also motivate themselves on the exact same journey. At the end of the day, I'm in life sciences too, and we make fantastic products. We have great innovation going on, but at the end of the day, for me as a leader, that one thing isn't the product, It isn't development. It isn't manufacturing. It is how I impact other people. And to the extent that I do that is really based upon and contingent upon my ability to go deep within myself and understand my perceptions, my thoughts, my emotions, my triggers, my reactions, and how I become better, because in the process of becoming better, a leader has a profound ability to impact everybody around them.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dave. So Lacey, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I have to agree with Fred and Dave. I mean, self-reflection and looking inwards is critical. For me, it's really connecting with myself and understanding who I am, as Dave mentioned, how I interact in different settings, self-regulating when you need to, and really having a close connection to who you are as a person. The more you connect with yourself, the better you can connect with everyone around you and inspire them to do the same. So very similar to what Fred and Dave had said, that's really my perspective when it comes to leadership.
Thank you so much, Lacey. Finally, Rekha, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I don't want to echo all the other, because I think they already said a lot. I think that being a leader, while proactively develop relationship with this big variety of people at the different level of the organization, you need always to try to keep a certain level of humility. That means that is difficult, because you will get feedback from different type of leader, or even sometimes from the bottom of the organization. That's so important, because even if you become a leader, I think that you need to not be defensive in front of criticism, but use this in order to continuously improve. That's just another on top of all that has been said, of course.
Yeah, well done, Rekha, for going last, because it is always one of the most challenging when you have everybody together that totally agree, with the same ideas, and then having to add something unique and different. But humility is something that's really important, and as leaders, I think from what I've seen, interviewing lots and helping lots like through their careers, the more senior you become, the more you realize the more you realize, the less you know about stuff.
That's
actually how important it is to have a team of people around you that are experts in certain areas, and part of the challenge then is, how do you navigate being in a situation where you aren't the expert and you don't actually have the answer, and how do you come across as still credible, but actually being comfortable with not knowing everything, and especially with these areas where we recruit, right, quality, regulatory and clinical, so much of it is about technical knowledge and about the detail. So that's a tricky situation to navigate, and one which I'm sure you've all got experience and thoughts on. One question that I wanted to move on to, though, was about this topic of introspection, because when I reached out to you all and I said, hey, will you come on to talk about looking inwards, you all said to me that you had connected with this theme as something being really important to you. So I'm interested to know, how did you first discover the theme of introspection, and why did you connect with this? So let me start by asking Dave.
Getting married.
Getting married, okay.
Getting married. For anybody in a relationship, it's a great place to learn introspection. Your question, why did you say that? Why did you do that? Or what you said hurt me, or your actions that you took did something to me. That also goes to for work relationships too, not just personal relationships. But when you have an opportunity to be up close with somebody and interact with somebody, you begin to realize, you know what? I think we all need a healthy dose of introspection, because what we do and what we say, or what we don't do, what we don't say, can have a profound impact upon those around us. And if you want to pursue authenticity and genuineness, which I believe is why we're on this call today, isn't it true that in order to become even more genuine, more authentic, we need to go deep within ourselves, learn more about ourselves, what makes us tick? Why do we say what we say? Why do we act the way we act? Why do we react the way we react? So I learned it from relationships. Failure is a big one. Failure is a big one. It forces you to really go deep, if you allow yourself to and nobody wants to fail, but you know what? I believe we probably learn more through failure than we do through success. And to go deep and understand why we did that. What could we have learned from that? What could I do differently next time? Was it something technical? Was it something more on the emotional intelligence level? Failure exposes shortcomings that, if we can do something positive with it, can actually be leveraged to become even stronger points in our careers, in our lives. I think at the end of the day, what's important for me is, again, wanting to be better myself and stronger and more effective. I want to have an impact upon other people. As a manager, and we all have a great responsibility for the people that are entrusted to our care. I want to be better so that I can be an influence upon them, so that they can be better and they can go on the same journey that I've gone on.
Thank you for that, Dave. So it's really interesting, because ultimately these are skills that aren't just to be used professionally, right? But they are so powerful in your personal relationships as well. So Lacey, what about you?
So when I had children, that was really when I started to discover who I was, right? For me, raising a child can be criticized up and down, right? But ultimately, what feels good to you as a parent is the most important thing. And so for me, when I had kids, I really got into this parenting style of mindfulness and respect. And I realized that felt so authentic to me as a person, whether it's at work, at home, etc. So for me, it was really when I had children, and that mindfulness, respect approach really carried through my entire life, no matter who I'm interacting with. So, and since then, it's about improving on those skills, right? Making sure that you're authentic to who you are and leading with those in mind, whether it's at home or at work. So for me, it was really when I started to have my children and understand who I was as a person and how I wanted to raise them so that they were thriving, just like I want to lead at work to ensure that my colleagues and my direct reports are thriving as well.
Thank you so much, Lacey, for giving your perspective. And again, making it's not just about professional, right? That it has that personal link as well. So really interesting to see that similar theme. And Fred, what about you?
Yeah, well, difficult after two deep answers like that, but I'd like to share, a bit of my first click, I would say, on that aspect. I remember years and years ago, I was probably had been a manager for 2 months or so. So a very fresh manager, first time managing a small team. And we did work on a project we wanted to present to our CEO at that time. And we did really prepare that very in depth. So a colleague of mine in my team did all the research, prepared a PowerPoint and etc. Then came the day of the meeting, very stressed, meeting with the CEO. We went to the meeting. My colleague did the presentation very well. The CEO, being a CEO, had an enormous amount of questions. All the questions had been answered, and that was it. Meeting ended up, and that was it. Very relieved. And then in the evening, I was driving back home, and I was just, thinking about first time of my life. I was just thinking, okay, what happened today? And then I was replaying this meeting, and as I was replaying this meeting in my head, I was seeing that every time a question was coming, I was so stressed. I was responding when I didn't do the work of researching. That wasn't my project. I was just too stressed, and my colleague could have handled that, of course. And by the time I arrived home, 20 minutes later, I was really feeling super bad because I just realized what I've done, And that was really the first time I was confronted to that. So, well, I'm really happy that at that time I've been able really to rebound on that. Immediately called my colleague and said, hey, I'm just realizing I've been totally incorrect. I've been wrong in my behavior. This meeting. Then we worked together really on fixing that to the point where I actually withdrew myself from the project and say, follow-up meetings, it's for you, it's not for me. And that, of course, ended well. We're friends and for more than 20 years now. So I think that's a good sign, even if we're no longer working together. But really that time, and I'm still really remember that very freshly, because that's really the moment when I discovered, it became obvious to me how critical self-reflection is. And as we're saying, it's not only about work, it's about life in general, because we are all human beings and we really want to do better, not only at work, but in our life in general. But really, that's the story of how it really started to click to me. And I have to say, pretty from that day, I've asked myself every single evening, how did today go? If today was to happen again, what would I do different? What would I do the same?
Those questions I think were really helpful and important, like what went well, what didn't go so well, what would I do differently next time? And I think one of the challenges with reflection or like reflecting is sometimes, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes you can sort of go into a bit of a negative spiral of, oh, I said that, I shouldn't have said that, how has that come across? And you sort of beat yourself up about it. How do you, and I know we haven't prepared this question, right, but this has just occurred to me right now, so feel free to raise your hand if you've got any advice, but how do you reflect positively and constructively without beating yourself up about something and creating sort of like an anxiety spiral of negativity, if you see what I mean? Anyone?
I think it's
Go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
no, just I will be short, Dave. But I think that overthinking is never, a good choice. Same is to be too self-critic or even too modest. Sometimes you achieve something, so I think that you need sometimes to, congratulate with yourself and try to focus on change behavior and move to the action. So execute on what you can do, make it an habit, because when you make it an habit, it becomes easier. That's really in few words. Dave, go ahead.
No, thank you. A lot of thoughts in my head right now, but I think one of them, probably the biggest one, is just being honest with yourself. You know what? I think Fred said this before. Nobody's perfect. We're not perfect. We have strengths, we have weaknesses, we have development areas. Nobody has a monopoly in perfection. And if anything, it is refreshing, I think, for the individual, but also when you talk to somebody to say, you know what, I was thinking about that conversation, about what I said, about what I did, and I realized that maybe it didn't come across the right way. To your point, Elena, to be honest and to reflect upon, to think, what could I have done differently? What could I have done better? It may be that we offended a colleague, and what better way to handle it than to go to somebody and say, I'm sorry, I really didn't mean to say it that way. I had a bad day. Whatever the issue is, who doesn't love honesty and transparency? I know as a manager of a team, I have a phenomenal team. I love them dearly. They think they've made a mistake in something. And I turn it around to say, well, first of all, what was the issue exactly? And then to say, what do we do next time to make it different, to make it better, to learn from it, to grow from it? We need to apply that to ourselves as well. I think the worst thing we can do is to not reflect upon it, not be honest with ourselves, to basically bury it and move on. In the process, you've done a great disservice to yourself. You've done a great disservice to your team or to those colleagues who perhaps maybe you said something wrong. I think at the end of the day, honesty and transparency goes a long way with ourselves. And we learn, right? Again, nobody's perfect. We can't beat ourselves up. What we should do is take all that negative energy and ask yourself the question, how can I do it differently and better next time? And nobody will ever fault us for that.
Yeah, really powerful. So Dave, you touched on the strengths and weaknesses element as well, and that's something that I'd love to move to. But before I do that, to all of our guests listening in, don't forget to look in the Slido, have a look at the pre-registered questions. If there's a question in there that you definitely want us to get to, please upvote that question by clicking the thumbs up. If you have your own question that you'd like to be addressed, add your question into that Q&A in the Slido. And everybody else, I would encourage you to upvote any new questions that you like the sound of. And when we do get to the Q&A on the Slido, we will be jumping over to that and we'll be addressing the most popular questions first. If you haven't got the Slido link, we'll be dropping it in the chat in just a second. But let's continue the conversation now around strengths and weaknesses. So my next question that I have is, how do you go about actually identifying your own strengths and weaknesses? And then how does that awareness influence your leadership style? I'm going to throw that to Fred.
Thank you very much. Yeah, look, great question. I'm really passionate by this topic. And I really believe that self-awareness, the way I represent that to myself, are really two components. I really see an internal self-awareness, which is really how you understand yourself. And then what I would call the external self-awareness as well, how others perceive you. And both are equally important, and you need both with balance. Because if you only have this internal self-awareness, you spend time introspecting, which is not a bad thing, by the way. You know who you are, but this is the time where you can actually develop or not see your blind spots. So that's not enough. If you only have the external self-awareness, so you're really looking at how people perceive you, the risk there is to, become a people pleaser, which is not a bad thing neither, but over time, there might be a personal fulfillment in that. If you don't have any, neither the internal or the external self-awareness, well, of course, there's no climbing this next step on the emotional intelligence. And if you really have both, this is what I believe is a good and a true self-awareness. So that's why it's so important to work on these two aspects. And really the way you can build the internal self-awareness is, as we're talking, taking time for self-reflection, asking yourself, what would I do differently? What would I do the same? And then on the external part, it's relying on people and people around you, to ask others what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and what perceptions people have of yourself. So really seeking good and honest feedback.
So for you, Fred, it's really about sort of like seeking feedback and asking for input on strengths and weaknesses. That's how you can go about identifying.
Absolutely. And balancing that, between the feedback you receive, but also the introspection that you're doing. These two aspects, I think, have to go together in a balance, definitely. And there are also many tools that are available, fun tools. I'm a big fan of that. But if you think about, I don't know, your Gallup Strengths Finder, your DISC profile, your Herman Brain Dominance instrument, and there are plenty of tools as well that can really help you to better understand who you are as well. If you do it alone, or if you did as a team, that already becomes also part of the feedback that you can get in your introspection. Yeah,
thank you so much, Fred. And Rekha, what about you? How do you go about identifying your strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah, for sure. In terms of tools, same tool that Fred just mentioned, and also the 360. And so it's something that we use pretty frequently. I think self-awareness is really the foundation to grow, develop, take new chance as a leader. And is really the ability to understand in what you are good at, average at, or bad at. So it can be uncomfortable. I think that self-awareness for many people could be really something uncomfortable because it's really show you how you are perceived by others, but sometimes even show you your real self. And this could be something that touch you because you say, oh, I did this, I did that, and you don't like who you are seeing. But that's also, with the bad situation come also an opportunity because it's just up to you and your own personal choice to improve in this. So this is a chance to improve and could help you growth, not only in your personal life, not only in your family life, but also in your career and in your organization. So I think that really to be an effective leader, on top of seek for feedback or be open to criticism, you maybe should start to become, able to discuss about your shortcoming, gain from experience that you have, and this will allow you to raise your bar by better knowing your strengths and weakness, and give you opportunity and limits. But these limits can be, in a certain way, moved on another level and an upper level in case you can really become consistent and stronger by this experience. That's my idea of self-awareness.
And I think it's really interesting because there's different schools of thought around, okay, so you identify your strengths and weaknesses, and then what do you do about them? And so some schools of thought are sort of like, lean into your strengths, forget about your weaknesses, build around your weaknesses. So hire someone that has a strength where you have a weakness. And other people will say, identify your strengths and then focus on your weaknesses and focus on improving your weaknesses and getting better at them. So I'm interested to Dave and to Lacey, sort of like, what are your thoughts with regards to what do you do once you've identified your strengths and weaknesses? Do you spend your energy on mastering your strengths or on improving your weaknesses? I'm going to throw that to Lacey first.
I'm of the school of thought that you focus on your strengths. So for me, I have an incredible team filled with so much talent. And in order to empower them to be the very best, it's important that you recognize their strengths. So I believe that focusing on your strengths and partnering with someone who potentially has a strength that you may have a weakness in is going to get you a lot farther than focusing so much effort on your weaknesses. So when we talk more about introspective and connecting with yourself, it comes full circle. You're connecting with what truly makes you and what your strengths are, and then partnering with colleagues who can help you in areas that you may not be so strong in. And that's how you move the needle, in my opinion. And that's what I do on my team.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Dave, what do you think about that?
I like Lacey's answer. Am I good with that?
Yeah, I
No, it's
interesting.
It's a great question. I'm glad you kind of introduced the topic with the fact there's different schools of thought. I'm of the persuasion you focus on your strengths as your primary focus. Depends upon the weakness. Depends what we're talking about. If it's and Lacey, I'm glad you brought up what you brought up. There are people that are strong in certain areas. There are people that are weak in certain areas, but as a team, we complement each other. And so from a weakness standpoint, to me, that's actually a strength by putting us in a bit of a puzzle to make us as a team as successful as a team. I think individually, it depends upon the weakness too. It depends on what you want to develop. There may be some skills you want to pick up, learn how to public speak, learn how to do a presentation better, or learn software coding. That's a great and admirable thing, something to address, but I think strengths are there for a reason, and they should be developed continually. That's what got you here in the first place. That's why you are successful. That's why you have the positions you have in our call today. So you continue on those. One thing that I'm very passionate about is sometimes you take the approach, well, I'm good to go. Those are my strengths. I don't need to develop those anymore because I'm successful, I'm fine. But isn't the purpose of all this development and growth and having a greater impact upon people? My personal philosophy is you have strengths, make them even stronger. Because if it's gotten you to a point where you are today, make them even stronger and go deeper and work on those to become even more effective, more successful. Weaknesses, yeah, definitely don't ignore them. They're there. And, sometimes, and, somebody once said too, and it's very true, if you look at strengths, there is a flip side to strengths. It could be a weakness. Somebody who is a type A personality when it comes to leadership may, as a weakness, be impatient and expect a lot. That individual, all the experts say, has to focus on that weakness to actually become more compassionate, more patient, find ways to work with a team of diverse personalities. Guess what? That resolution of that weakness actually makes you stronger. It actually strengthens your strength is a better way to say it. And so I think there's a healthy balance. We leverage our strengths, we go deep with our strengths, we identify the weaknesses, which may be shooting ourselves in the foot, as we say, and limiting us. But it's been demonstrated time and time again that the people that do both are the people that achieve the most out of life and most out of their careers.
Yeah. And I think that's really important. And that comes back round to self-awareness and to having that understanding of where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, making sure that you're having the opportunity to apply them in the right situations. So I just want to take a pause for a second to let everybody know that we had some technical issues with going live on LinkedIn as a video event. So we've switched over and now we are currently live on LinkedIn as an audio event. So to all of those of you that are listening live on LinkedIn to this audio event, I'm very, very happy. My name is Elena, so you have to recognize the voice. I am the CEO of Elemed. I'm very happy to have on here Fred Bustos. Fred, say hello, just so everyone can hear your voice.
Hello.
This is Fred. We've got Dave on here. Dave.
Hi, everyone.
Brilliant. We've got Lacey on here. Lacey.
Hi, everyone.
And we've got Rekha.
Hello.
Brilliant. So we're going to carry on with the conversation. Sorry for the short pause there. So I'd like to move on and talk a little bit about authenticity and emotional intelligence, because this is one of the big themes of looking inwards, and it's what I would say is like a trending topic for leadership right now, being an authentic leader. And I've also seen a lot of posts on LinkedIn about how emotional intelligence is really the new currency of leadership. So I'd like to understand from your perspective, truly, what is the difference between authenticity and emotional intelligence? So I'm going to point that to Rekha to start with.
Okay, so in my view, authenticity is essentially the quality of being real, of being true. So I believe that this is something that is really necessary for a good leader, because it's not possible to do any discount on authenticity. So you cannot play like a theatrical performance. This consumes you a lot of energy. You sound hypocrite, to me, at least that's my experience. So I think that the best positioned leader really need to be authentic, because this inspires trust, loyalty, and also strong performance from employees. I think that according to what we said before on self-awareness, authenticity is something that really you need to cultivate so that you can really bring transparency in your relation, strong ethical and moral code in everything you're doing. And this is nurturing for all the relationship that you build during your career, your working career, and become an example as a leader. On another side, the difference with emotional intelligence, I think Fred mentioned it before, but I think it's really connected to your ability to understand and manage every emotion that you really, feel during your working life, and not only, because sometimes you have also your personal life, children, and so on, that come and of course bite you, because in any case, you need to give also energy there in your work-life balance. So I think that this is another very valuable skill, probably a key skill that is better, in my opinion, even when I evaluate the talent that I have to hire, than the hard skill. Because for the hard skill, I can always teach them. The problem is if they miss emotional intelligence, then it's really difficult to have people calm under pressure, that is able to resolve conflicts, responsible with their co-workers. So this kind of empathy, let us call it like this, I think is important at any level of the organization, mostly in leaders, but not only. That's, I would say, the way I see it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Dave, what about you?
I think very similar to what Rekha shared. I mean, authenticity is the state of being genuine or real. And emotional intelligence is more of your ability to really go deep and, from a self-awareness standpoint, understand what makes you tick. They go hand in hand. They're definitely related. I wouldn't say that. In fact, I would say that you can't have one without the other. You can't have authenticity without emotional intelligence or high emotional intelligence, and you can't have emotional intelligence or use it without being authentic. It's a desire. I think going back to authenticity, if it's in our heart to be genuine, if it's in our heart and our desires to be real, we're going to embrace and engage emotional intelligence to dig into ourselves, to find out how we feel, our perceptions, our reactions, etc., and then use that to become stronger and more developed. That leads to even more genuineness. So I think they play off with each other, quite honestly. When I think of emotional intelligence, and you combine that with being genuine, there's a certain maturity in this pursuit where you look into yourself, you look into your ability to be empathetic and compassionate and understanding, for example, to really connect with people on a heart level, which not only leads to genuineness development in your own life, but your perception, how people perceive you as being genuine. An individual may desire to be genuine, may think they are genuine, but if that isn't seen and felt in those relationships with other people, colleagues, for example, your leaders, people under you, for example, then we've really done ourselves a great disservice. The genuineness connected to emotional intelligence, being able to understand how you think and how you see the world, to be able to interact with other people and connect with them on a heart level, it's really one one package deal.
Yeah. And it's those are all, it's really interesting because these are what like historically have been called sort of like soft skills, but they're actually hard. They're not. So it's quite ironic in that situation. But what I see more often than not is as you progress through your career, these softer skills, the how you communicate things, the way you interact, how you make people, they become more and more important. And actually what becomes less and less important is the technical knowledge that you have. To anyone, this is something that I try to convey a lot as we're doing sort of career coaching conversations. It's really about, you know, for those people who do want to develop their leadership skills and progress as a leader in an organization, it's making that transition from being the technical expert that has all the answers to really leaning into those softer skills that, you know, you don't necessarily have a qualification in per se, but those are the things that will help you navigate that next stage of your career. So that's really interesting. We've got a couple more minutes before we go to the Slido. So to everybody who's listening in, don't forget to go over to the Slido to upvote the questions that you want us to get answered, and we'll make sure that we address the most popular questions. But before we go there, I have one final question that I'd like to put to you guys, which is around feedback, because feedback is something that is so important. It's something that you've referenced throughout this early stage of the conversation. And I'd like to know, what is a great way of getting feedback, or what is a not so great way of getting feedback? Because asking for feedback is something that's really important, but it's actually the way that you go about asking for feedback that is at what gives you the value. So I'm going to throw that question over to Fred. How do you go about asking for feedback?
Absolutely. Well, look, I think the first thing is to know when you're ready, because let's be honest, we're not always ready for feedback. So, you know when you're ready. And really, I think one important thing is actively ask for them, but then immediately take the time to plan what you're going to do about that. I've done that in the past. Parking a feedback, if you park it for later, you're never going to do anything about it. So be ready to immediately, start thinking about, okay, this is what I'm going to do with that. And I think what is interesting as well is to have this balance of the formal, feedback, whether it's a 360 or these tools that we've discussed, but also the punctual ones on the spot. And maybe two things that I do, and that really works for me. Everybody's different, but that works for me. I blocked 15 minutes block in my calendar at the end of every single day for the self-reflection. So that's my internal feedback to myself. And I'm just asked this simple question: how did I do today? And then the other things, for my external feedback, I've created my list of what I call my trusted critics. And it's a short list. I have 5 people on this list, 3 at work, 2 outside of work. And these are really people that I've clearly identified, that I know that whatever happens, even if I'm already feeling a bit, clunky, I can ask them for feedback, and I will always take this feedback positively for me. And after it's a presentation, it's a big meeting, it's a lunch with friends, it's whatever, I'm reaching to one or more of these trusted critics, and I just ask them, okay, how did I do? And that is a super powerful thing to do. Last week, I had all my team, 100 people, gathered in Madrid for 2 days. And I can tell you, I've asked many people yesterday and today, how did I do? And that, to me, is the best way to get feedback that really are actionable for me.
Yeah, really, really powerful. And I really like the idea of having sort of like a board of trusted critics and actually identifying like who those people are and proactively asking for that feedback. Dave, what about you?
I would put a twist on the question, if you don't mind. Instead of asking for feedback, ask for advice. Ask for advice. And there's a bit of a nuance between feedback and advice. Feedback is good, no issue, but feedback tends to be backward looking. What did you do? What didn't you do? Where did you fail? What did you do really, really well? It's always in the past. If you ask for advice, advice is more forward thinking. Advice opens up the conversation to possibilities. So you go to your manager and you say, give me some feedback on the last year. What is he going to do? He's going to talk about the last year. And maybe some of that is okay. There's some things to definitely identify and learn. But if you go to your manager and said, I need some advice from you about some things I'm working through. Now you open up a whole new realm for your manager. Now he's thinking forward. He's thinking about possibilities and opportunities. He's thinking how you can get better. And so there's a real strong nuance between those two words. Very practically, I think Fred touched on some of these too, but come up with a plan. I know it sounds maybe corny, sounds maybe funny, but come up with a plan. What exactly is it that you want to achieve? I wouldn't go to your manager and say, hey, I need some feedback on something. Go to your manager with a preconceived plan. Maybe you're struggling with something, technical, emotional. You want to get better, develop in some area. Write that down and think very specifically about what you want to ask. I would say because we're all very busy. I mean, we're all busy, no matter what position you are. Give your manager, your leader some time. Set some time up, give them an advance notice. This is why I'm coming to talk to you. I'd like to discuss point A, point B, and point C. I need your advice on some things to give me some guidance for the future. One thing that's very important too is be prepared and be open for anything you hear. We have a tendency to want to sugarcoat things. We have a tendency to want the pat on the back. You know, you really did a good job, or maybe the thing wasn't so great, but here's how you can make it better in the future. You know what? Take the attitude of going in and asking the hard questions to your manager. What do I really and truly need to learn? And please be very, very honest. Could be a cultural thing. I'm just being very honest. As an American, Americans don't do the best job with that. We're not direct enough. But Europeans, different story. You ask a European manager for feedback and advice, they will give you the feedback and advice, and they'll tell you exactly what you need to work on. Be open, be humble. Someone mentioned humility before. Go in with an attitude, I really, really want to learn. I don't want to hear something that I just want to hear. I really want to go in and maybe have a life-changing experience with some feedback and some advice that maybe somebody hasn't given me yet, but I know there's something there that I need to work on. So it's all about your hard attitude and being open, asking for the tough advice, but going in very specifically to say, I need help with, or I need advice with point A and point B. And then I think some really cool, positive things can happen.
Thank you so much for that, Dave. So we've got some that was a really interesting insight, because I think naturally, you know, making it about advice. Also, what I found is that people like to give advice. People don't like to give feedback. And often, and especially if you throw someone on the spot and say, hey, have you got any feedback? And it's like one of these really big open questions. Most often, I find that you don't really get much from the response. Like it ends up sort of being a bit, yeah, you did well, and a bit blurry, but especially if they haven't had time to prepare to, you know, to actually give you that feedback. Some of it is the preparation, some of it is the way you ask the question, and then some of it is culturally, for example, you know, them not wanting to maybe hurt your feelings. So making sure that you set it up well as to why you're asking for it. That's also really important. Okay, guys, I'm going to move now to the Slido, because we've had some interaction over in the Q&A, and now I want to take it to as much of a live Q&A as possible. So to all of our guests who are listening in, we're going to be going across to the Slido now, and we're going to be addressing the most popular questions first. We're going to try and get through as many as we can between now and the end of the session. But if there's a question on there that you like and it's near the bottom, upvote it. If you have a question that is not on there that you want us to get to, please add it, because maybe there's other people on there that really would like to see that question answered. And if you're listening on LinkedIn Live and you don't directly have access to the Slido, don't worry, we will be sending across on LinkedIn Live via chat. I think Jessica will be sending across the link to the Slido so that you can also see where we are all interacting, as that is our center of truth for asking questions to our panel. So panel, are you ready? Because this is not perfect now, so this is going good. Okay, so the first question that we have, and this one is the most popular question: how can you identify gaps within yourselves, blind spots, and how do you go about knowing what you don't know? So if you can answer this question, just raise your hand and I'll throw the word to you. So Dave, let's start with you first.
I'll make it very quick. It's an excellent question, and it shows a definite humbleness and humility in the person who asked that question. Great start, by the way. Why don't you ask some people that know you, good friends, who interact with you, who know you, who have seen you at your best and seen your worst. You could even ask colleagues, too. As Fred said, he has some very trusted, I like that word, by the way, trusted critics. But go to them and just ask them, what do you see in me? Where are the gaps? Where are the issues? Where do I fall down? Where do I not quite get it or connect the dots? And if you ask in a humble, honest, authentic way, and you ask some people that you can really trust, who you know, like you, and respect you and love you, you will get some very good feedback. That's my short answer.
Thank you. Lacey?
So I'd like to just piggyback off of what Dave said. I think in addition to getting feedback from people that know you, I would encourage everyone to find mentors, a coach, even therapy. You know, I'm a big advocate for going through therapy if there's areas that you're uncomfortable with or that make you feel that this is an area that I need to dive into and really understand why I'm being triggered by certain situations that are happening. So I think it just all circles back to self-awareness, introspective, really getting to know yourself on a deeper level.
Thank you so much for that. So
if I might add just something very quickly, you know, I would definitely go 1 and 2 with what Dave and Lacey have just explained. I think as well 360s, you know, more formal tools are also very helpful tools, you know, to identify really where your areas of strengths and weaknesses are. So that's probably a third option, third way.
Just quickly on that. So Fred, because in case people are listening and don't know what a 360 is, can you just quickly define it?
360 is definitely it's a formalized full review of your, you know, your strengths and weaknesses through feedback, very directed feedback, but from a broad panel of people. So people who are working with you, people who are working for you, people who are leading you, different type of stakeholders, and it's really give you a full picture, let's say, of well, how people see you interacting and working with others and areas where maybe be a blind spot for you.
Thanks. And often it's anonymous, so yes, you can also, you know, share with someone and just get,
Yes, that's a very important point. Thank you, Rekha. So Rekha, we haven't heard from you for a couple of questions. I'm gonna start this next one with you. And so we have also another popular question is, how can I overcome self-doubt as a leader? I have imposter syndrome. So how can I overcome self-doubt as a leader? I have imposter syndrome.
I think that, I think that what is important is that a leader dedicate time to improve as a leader. So to understand it himself, I think Dave mentioned this, even do the exercise to write down who you are. And again, I probably mentioned this during our speech before, we should not be too critical towards ourselves, because this is not good as well. Sometimes you start to feel like that your self-doubt really are too many, and you miss your mission. Your mission is to try to inspire, try to be courageous, brave, go through your fears. And this is a part of the fear, but the only way to, you know, survive and also move forward, in my opinion, is try to get into it, try to understand and put even in written who you are, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and how to work on it. Because the problem is that anyone, and it's also good to have self-doubt. It's better to have doubt than just, you know, certainties, in my opinion. The point is, don't get blocked by them. So don't stop to improve and to work on yourself. Find ways, find also what is good with you, celebrate yourself, your own win. And that's also, in my opinion, something important, because you need a balance. Go, Dave.
Just one quick, thank you. I love that answer. I don't know the context of the question, but let me just toss out a scenario. Sometimes we have self-doubt because we're in a position where we feel like we don't have the right skills or competence. Now, if I'm speaking to a manager, it all depends on your department and your configuration as a manager. You might be there for different reasons. And I think Fred or maybe Lacey had said something before about this. Celebrate and embrace your weaknesses. Pull the other people on your team into the mix, into this dynamic, because you know what? They may have the strengths where you don't. They may have the technical expertise where you don't. You may be there for a different reason, quite honestly. And maybe we need to let the self-doubt go and realize, here are my strengths, here are my weaknesses, here are my limits, here's what I can do, here's my capacity, here are my strengths. You know what? I'm going to leverage the rest of the team to become a true team and help each other. At GE, I make a long story short, I was asked to take over a role in this particular department years ago. And I flat out said to this, one of the leaders of the company, I don't know a thing about this. So I'm just being honest with you. I just want to be very authentic with him. I don't know a thing about this area. And he said, I know. That's why I wanted to bring you in, because you're bringing other skill sets to this particular department. And you know what? It was the best experience I'd ever had in my entire life at GE. And believe me, I could have wrote the book on self-doubt in that chapter of my life, but I embraced it. And I found out, you know what? There may be certain things I don't know and I can't do, but I'm going to tap on the rest of the team to help me. And it was a very, very good, rewarding part of my life. If that makes any sense to the person who asked the question.
Thanks so much, Dave. This thing about imposter syndrome is really a challenge, and in particular, women suffer from this. I have to say more than men, right? Like all the data shows. But so there's some really interesting podcast episodes on Career Diaries by Elemed, which are really worth listening to. One in particular with Olga, and the one that's about to drop with Eric Claassen. And this is talking about going into roles where, you've, like, similar to you, Dave, where like you're literally stepping into a role, you have no experience. Obviously somebody has believed in you to do that, and then it's about giving yourself that chance. And honestly speaking, everybody experiences imposter syndrome at some point, so it's a totally normal thing, and it's important to just not feel alone, right? And to just keep pushing forwards, because somebody has taken a chance on you, somebody believes in you. Even if you're not believing in yourself in that moment in time, give yourself the benefit of the doubt, because somebody else is backing you, and that's how you've got to that moment that you're in. Let's move to the next question. So the next one that's at the top is, what is the one thing that you have personally done to become a better leader, which has worked really well? I'll put this to all four of you. So I'm looking for the one thing that you have personally done to become a better leader that has worked really, really well. Let's start with Lacey.
For me, I think it's really understanding what my true values are, right? What are my, if you say big rocks, sometimes I refer to it as my big rocks. What are the big rocks that are so important to me? And those little rocks that fill in the gaps that the old me would spend a ton of time stressed over. Really eliminating those little rocks and focusing on the big rocks of what's so important to me, and setting boundaries in place so that I can focus. It has really made a difference. And I like to lead by example too. So I really encourage that for my team to do the same when they're feeling overwhelmed, to prioritize and ensure that what they're doing is aligned with their values. And of course, business priorities is important too, but there's always an opportunity to negotiate and have these conversations with yourself or with your direct reports, your colleagues. So really, really focused on what your true values are and what brings you meaning and joy has been really, really life-changing for me.
Thank you. And Lacey, just on that point, can you explain the concept of rocks, sand, and pebbles?
Sure. I don't know if I'll do it perfect, but I will give it a try. So if you think of a glass vase, right, and you fill it with all these pebbles and sand, they kind of sink to the bottom, and then you have bigger rocks that go in. And then you fill it with more sand and more pebbles. It's just those pebbles and sand start to just build up and build up and build up. And you find yourself just totally overwhelmed by all these little things that fill in the voids. And then sometimes you lose focus on those large rocks that truly bring meaning to your life. So the concept is really to not get so stuck in the weeds of all those little tasks, and either delegate or give them to someone else who might enjoy those tasks, whether it's a personal chore that you have to do at home that you don't like, potentially someone else in your household can do it. Or at work, if it's something that you don't particularly enjoy, see who might enjoy that or has a strength to do that type of task, right? And then focus on the large rocks that truly bring meaning and joy to your life. How was that, Elena?
Yeah, that's exactly it, Lacey. And the reason I totally resonated with it, because this comes from the book Traction, and it exactly speaks about that. And so if you have your vase and you put in your sand and then your pebbles and try and put your rocks on top, it doesn't all fit in. But if you put your rocks in first, which are the big bits, you put them in first, then you put your pebbles, then you put your sand, it all fits in the vase because you put your rocks in first. And so that's actually something that I did that I found really useful, was actually sitting down and saying, okay, of all the things that I do across my week, what tasks specifically are rocks for me, and what tasks are pebbles for me, and what are sand for me, and color code them. And so then when you're planning out your diary, you can actually see how much time you're actually spending on your rocks. And if you're not spending enough time on your rocks, you can see it immediately if you know. So for me, rocks are grey. In my diary, if I don't see grey every day, I know that I'm not spending time on the things that I've identified that really matters in moving things forwards. So that's a really powerful technique, Lacey. So Fred, what about you?
Absolutely aligned with Lacey. That's really when I took the time to think, for me, what is my North Star? What is the single thing, that is important to me? In my case, it's really, a simple, sounds a bit corny, but really treating people as I would like to be treated, right? And this has become my North Star. And every time in a situation where I don't know what to do, I have to make a decisions, or I just go back to that, and that really has made a huge difference to me, because that really helped me to be much more comfortable to, when in a situation where you don't know, because there are a lot of things that we don't know, that I don't know. This is really becoming my true North Star. So to Lacey's point, it's identifying what is really important to me, and then really stick with that.
Thanks, Fred. And Rekha, what about you?
I think that, of course, I can echo what they said, but thinking that something that really become important for me to work on my leadership has been also follow mentorship program. So maybe being a mentor or being a mentee. I think that this helped me a lot, because it's something that you do even outside from your organization or outside from your functional area. So not just, for example, for me, quality or regulatory, but something else. And this helped me pretty much in trying to get advice and get feedback on maybe specific situations that are in any case completely disconnected by the reality of the mentor that I had in front of, or for me from the mentee perspective, and that was useful. So in case I have to suggest something, I think that is a good way to improve yourself and get good advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Mentoring is a big thing that we believe in a lot here at Elemed. Hence why we have the mentoring program. I had to do the little plug. Dave, what about you? You're last, so the most difficult position, but have you got anything?
It is. The pressure's on. There's one thing that probably keeps coming to the surface, and that is valuing people through listening and empathy. And I would encourage, the question was a great question. I would encourage everybody, as you work on your technical skills and competence, as you work on your career, please don't ever forget the importance of valuing your colleagues, valuing your manager, valuing people that work under you. There's a lot to be said for having those relationships, not just business, but also a friendly type of relationship, one where you can talk and you can share. I spent a lot of time, and in fact, I told my team when I first came to Bio-Rad, I don't know how previous managers have done this, but my one-on-ones that we set up every week with the team, it's not going to be about business. Yeah, we'll do the cursory quarterly reviews and the semi-annual reviews. Sure, we'll talk about maybe goals and objectives, but it's a chance to really just talk and share about what's going on. And if you'd ask my team members, they would tell you that probably 3/4 of our conversations are really about personal things. How are we doing? What's going on? What are you challenged with today? What are you struggling with today? To be able to value people and to be empathetic versus treating them like a number. And I'm not saying that we would do this intentionally, but if we come into our meetings with colleagues or with people that report to us and say, okay, what have you done this week? Did you achieve your goal this past quarter? What does that make them feel like? It may make them feel like just a number, just there to perform. Yes, goals are important. We need to watch those, but at the end of the day, it's about empowering people to become, better and stronger and develop themselves as we develop ourselves. And to the extent that we can show empathy and compassion and concern, that we can ask them point blank, how are you doing? I've had some amazing conversations where, and I won't repeat the content, it's immaterial, but the things they shared in the meetings were things I never would have even thought about had we not talked about it, but it was an impediment. It was something blocking their progress, their performance, or how they see themselves. And we've had a chance to talk these things out. That is by far probably the most rewarding thing that I do with my team, and something that I really tried to focus in on, to the original question. More so than probably anything that I do is really building up my team and getting to know them.
Yeah. I think that's a really important point, right? Because it is all about the people that you're leading, and ultimately it's a human world still, right? Like to be a leader is to be able to interact with people and getting the best out of the people that you work with. Key part of that is understanding them, understanding their strengths, their weaknesses, their challenges, what's going on for them, and then helping them to succeed. So thank you guys for those really interesting points. So we've got some really interesting movements moving. I can literally see in real time these questions on Slido moving up and down the chain. So keep interacting, guys. We will be addressing the most popular questions first, and if there's questions that you want to add, please add them, and to everybody else, please keep looking at Slido because there's new stuff coming in all the time. So there is a question that I dropped already in the chat to you guys, and that says, I'm worried this will make me look weak, vulnerable. How do I manage that? Now, I'm going to just hazard a guess that this is talking about either vulnerability or authenticity, or showing that side of you, that might make this person feel sort of weak, vulnerable. So I don't need all four of you to answer this question, but who wants to take that question? How do you go about managing emotional intelligence, authenticity, without being worried that you're going to come across as weak or vulnerable in front of your team? Any takers? Lacey?
I'll take this one. So there's a fact that I want to throw out because we're talking so much about emotional intelligence. There's some studies out there that show that emotional intelligence makes up about 60% of your success, which is very high considering some individuals think your technical experience really is a reason for your success. So to Elena's point, many times throughout this presentation, emotional intelligence is so important. Personally, I can relate to this question. Historically, I have been told that sometimes I come across too fluffy, and it's feedback that I've received, and I appreciate it, right? Because it really has helped me navigate the way I present myself. But at the same sense, it really allows me to come into my own authentic self as well, and know that that's who I am. And, you may feel vulnerable, but at the end of the day, if that's truly who you are, then own it. And the confidence piece is really what's going to balance out that vulnerability, is being confident in yourself, believing in yourself, positive reassurance and self-talk. Really focus on that coaching, that mentorship, to make sure that you're moving in a very positive direction with yourself, because that will really counterbalance that vulnerability that you feel. And it's not a bad thing at all. It definitely just helps us reassure us who we are and who we want to be.
Thank you so much for that. So on the topic again of emotional intelligence, because this has come up again and again, but actually what we've got here is a question around, so we've already defined what it means to be emotionally intelligent, but actually it'd be really good if you could on the spot come up with an example of a time where you've had to use emotional intelligence. So what does it actually look like in practice to use or to be emotionally intelligent?
One short story, which quite honestly I've never ever experienced my entire life until I was here at Bio-Rad. We had a significant loss on our team. One of my team members lost his wife and his baby during the childbirth. And we have a very close team, very close-knit team. We're not just workers, we're also friends and colleagues. Team was devastated, absolutely devastated. And I had team members calling me up literally in tears, sobbing, because of our good friend and colleague and what had happened. And, at that point, goals and performance and reviews go out the window. Doesn't mean anything. It was an opportunity for the team to come together. It was an opportunity for me as a manager to talk with each person, to really listen and to empathize, to talk things through, keep the team together. It was a very tough time, something I'd never experienced before, and something I hope I never experience again. But at that point in time, you really have to focus in on not only the emotions of people that you're talking with, but also your own emotions and your ability to connect with these people and give them some sliver of encouragement, or just even listen, and let them talk and let them share.
Wow. Well,
that's tough. That's tough indeed. Yeah, maybe on another level, because it's not so complicated. I think that this was really tough, even trying to go through it. But even just big changing an organization, we're seeing a lot of them now in the MedTech environment in general. And these uncertainties and all the things going on sometimes make the team feel really uncomfortable, because the change is something that not always is welcomed by people. So I think that emotional intelligence can be expressed in this case by trying to be objective, trying to resist even when you are under pressure, and resolve in a very effective way all this situation, trying really to be very laser focused on what is going on, and try really not to put too many emotion into it, because if you start to really spin because of the fear, then you will never see the light. A leader, in my opinion, in this case, must be a little bit visionary, and also try to really be at the firelight for the team, the true north, as Fred probably mentioned before. Try to tell your team where they need to go, essentially, what they need to build to go there. Because of course, the company need to stay, an organization need to stay up and running. And this is also a way to distract yourself sometime and get, in any case, different vibes, because it's a sort of balance, continuous balance. So I think that in the case of Dave, he did great, because he was there also to listen. So he put together the professional part and the human part. And that's important too, because this is how we are made. We have all these pieces, and we need to go with all of these at the same time.
Yeah. Thank you, Rekha. So let's go to the next question then. The next most popular question, which is a very popular one, which is, how can we avoid trying to change what other colleagues are doing and take action and be willing to change ourselves? So this is about, how do you fight that instinct of trying to change others and actually make the change in yourself, because change starts from within, I think is the saying, and looking inwards is the right theme for this question. So Fred, maybe I'll start with you on this one. What are your thoughts here?
Well, I think it's a bit of both, to be honest, that has to happen, right? Because that's working together or interacting together. It's work or it's outside of work. It's really about finding the path, the way how we can communicate. So it's about understanding, the first thought is to say, okay, I'd like my colleague to change what they're doing, is to try to understand, okay, why are they doing what they're doing that way? And then all of a sudden it becomes a very different discussions, because then it becomes a discussion, okay, this is how I would like it to be done, or this is how I would like to communicate, and this is how my colleague would like to communicate. And then all of a sudden, it's becoming the way easier to find this win-win situation. So I think it's about always asking yourself, why is this happening? Why is this colleague behaving like that? Or why is this person behaving like that? So that then you can start really thinking about the way to find the win-win situation. Because at the end of the day, everything is kind of a transaction, right? And it has to be a win-win situation. So it's your role to define, how am I going to get this win-win? But to do that, you need to understand first what would be a win, what would be the definition of the win for my colleague, for example. And then it becomes way easier, to start defining, well, this is how we're gonna reach this win-win together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So guys, we're in the last 10 minutes of the live Q&A. So if you're a guest listening in on this session, both on LinkedIn Live and also on Zoom, have a look at the Slido, upvote the questions that are burning the most for you, that you want us to make sure we address. We're going to try and get through as many as we can. So we're going to move to a quick fire round now with one answer per question per person to try to address as many as possible. And I'm going to be dropping them in the Zoom chat, panelists, so you can see them as you can see what we're basically going to be going with. So the next question is, how to balance RAQA employees' desire to know everything with information overload and wasting time in resource constrained startup like environments? So how do you balance RAQA employees' desire to know everything with information overload and wasting time in resource constrained startup like environments? Who can take that one?
I will. And this is an issue all the time because RAQA people are very curious and they want to know everything about everything in the company. To me, it's most important to make sure that their jobs, their roles, their responsibilities are clearly defined, that they have the information they need to be able to do the job they've been given to do. I make it a point, I'm giving a practical example where once a month in a monthly meeting, I actually give them the highlights of the company performance, for example, things going on in different regions, things going on across the globe, key projects, key activities, key challenges, regulatory changes, to give them enough information for them. And they've always said this too, we want to feel included. We want to be a part of this. Granted, my job may be in Munich, Germany, but it would sure be nice to know what's going on in RAQA in California, for example, at headquarters. So I make it a point to at least give them enough information so that they have a very good idea of what's going on.
Thank you for that one, Dave. So next question we've got, and this is a really interesting one, so I'm going to read this out. So how do you work collaboratively with other leaders who you don't agree with or you just don't like? How do you move from an uncomfortable situation to being able to work together? So Rekha, you're smiling.
Yeah, I smile because sometimes happen being in a rank way, we are a little bit pain for a lot of people. No, I think that active communication, I usually try to go direct to these people. So maybe we are to department, we are maybe fighting for something because the idea are really far one from each other. And I think that the communication is the key always. So try to work together, try to have a clear and transparent confrontation. It's always a good way to start this discussion, because until you are not trying to, put these two parallel bars that go ahead forever into the same room or one in front of each other, it's impossible to get to a conclusion. And it's difficult to work together, but there is no way to make it happen if you are not working together with your peers or colleague. And again, I'm speaking about maybe different function, but this silos situation that is very visible, especially in big matricial organization, that's something that is really disruptive to the business itself. So I think that effective communication, but also effective listening, because usually you go there, you blame, no, it's I'm right, you are wrong. That's not correct. You need to try to put your feet into the shoes of another before, and so the risk, all the risks that are possible. And after you see this, then maybe you can take decisions that are balanced, take some risk, but not really throw everything under the bus. That's really how I see it.
And that thing of like putting, what did you say, put your feet in the shoes of somebody else, that's emotional intelligence, right? I mean, that's part and
That's
parcel.
true. Yeah, be empathetic with how they are facing and what they are facing, because you don't know. To another question was, you don't know what you don't know. So the only way is to expose yourself and wet your feet and try to see how it is.
Yeah. So thank you, Rekha. So next question we've got, and I'm going to throw this at Lacey. Lacey, what is the best way to deliver negative feedback?
Good question. So negative feedback is not always fun, right? But I think it's important that when you're delivering it, you ask the person, are you ready to receive it? Right? I think Dave said this initially earlier, that you have to be open to receiving feedback. If the person on the other end is not in a place to receive feedback, it's not a good time. And that comes back to emotional intelligence too, right? You have to be emotionally intelligent to know when is the right time to deliver negative feedback. And when that time comes, you do need to be empathetic to what you're delivering, deliver it in a way that comes across as clear and direct, but also understanding that the person might feel defensive. They may have all these feelings that bubble up. So really understanding that and being able to make space for those feelings and navigate through them appropriately is really important. So
thank you very much for that, Lacey. So a very important message. So make sure the person's ready to receive the feedback and then be empathetic and give them space to be able to digest it. Fred, I've got one for you. Can you share an example on the topic of feedback of a particularly impactful piece of feedback you received as a leader and how you applied it to improve your leadership style?
Yeah, definitely. That's I once received a feedback, you can call it like it's a sandwich feedback, or you get the good and then you get the not so good and then the good again. But anyway, the sandwich came like that, saying, well, you are a great leader for your team. It's working very well. The team is delivering. Everybody in your team loves you, but no one outside of your team knows you across the company. And that was really the feedback. That was, well, identify your stakeholders and be present for them, be visible for them as well. And that's, to me, is I'm still thinking about that, because that has been a powerful one as well, to also think about who your stakeholders are and apply all this emotional intelligence or this communication tools, not only for your team, for your area, but broadly across the organizations. So that's definitely has been an impactful feedback for me. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for being open and honest and sharing that feedback. So I have one for you, Dave. And on the topic of future leaders, how would you identify a future leader? What are the key aspects that you would consider to select one?
That is a phenomenal question, and I'm actually in a situation like that right now. We're working on succession planning for different departments, and somebody said, what happens if you get hit by the proverbial bus tomorrow? Who will take your place? And I gave them some recommendations, and it was based on, one, a commitment to their job. They love what they're doing. They're invested in it. They're coming up with ideas for continuous improvement. They see the big picture. I think one key thing we look for in leaders is, can they connect the dots? And can they look around the corner? Can they anticipate what's coming? And this individual has a very unique ability to do that, a very uncanny ability to do that. They're not quite there yet, for example, with maybe certain quality competences, but that can be taken care of through training. It is a dedication to the team. It is an openness to other cultures. We have an EMEA group. And for someone who's open to the different European countries, Asian countries, African countries, to me is a very vital requirement for this position. An individual who has aspirations for continuous improvement. They want to be able to make things better, make things different, implement deep, long-lasting, sustaining changes. Looking for individuals that have that ability, or if they don't yet have the technical skills, at least they have that innate understanding of what it takes, and then we can provide the proper training. So it's a combination of culture, combination of communication skills. It has to do with one's just competence, one's ideas and aspirations to be able to really make things better. And not just from a compliance standpoint, because we work in compliance all the time. It's really trying to find ways to vastly improve the processes so that it's not just about compliance, but we're actually doing something phenomenal with our processes. We're hitting our targets. We're making changes and deep improvements in the company.
Thank you so much for that, Dave. So we have time for one last question. And so I'm going to just jump to the final question that I am going to throw out to Rekha. What is the best way? Sorry, I'm going to just drop this in the chat. Really short one, Rekha. Oops. What is the best way for providing feedback to your leader?
Oh, you cannot use like a good thing, a bad thing. It's not working so well. Now I think that in the proper way, you can say everything. The point is to find the proper way and the proper time, and possibly also not to really sleep on this in the sense that, you tend to, especially when you have to report something that maybe is not going so well to the top, is you feel, judged maybe, or you feel uncomfortable because it's a way to show your weakness, maybe because something was not going perfectly. And essentially, there is also another part that sometimes give a feedback is also, try to educate your manager. So that is difficult as well, because essentially, you need to set some kind of boundary. So otherwise, you cannot always be available, especially thinking about, for example, I'm European, but I report into US. So, that there is a sort of timeline sometimes. It's difficult, but I think that the good way to do it is first, again, emotional intelligence. So try to understand who you have in front of you. At which level of confidence, at which level of trust, at which level of possibility to share really your thoughts you arrive, and not to sleep on it, and really try to be, would say, direct and transparent, because I think that this is always the authenticity pay, or at least from my perspective, authenticity always pay. If you build this trust immediately, starting really from the first exchange that you have with your boss, everything is a little bit more easy. Then of course you have to give feedback and sometimes say, I'm off, I cannot answer. It could be difficult, but essentially you need to do it. So that's how we'll do it.
Thank you so much, Rekha. Guys, we're right at the end of the session. So just super quickly, I'd like you all to jump into your Slido. We're launching a poll, and I'd like to see, the question on the poll is, what did you learn from today's session? I'd love to see what your main learnings and takeaways have been. So please jump into the poll in the Slido and let us know what you have learned from the session. I can see in here, focus, stack the rocks. What else have you learned, guys? Let us know, let our participants and our panelists know what you've taken away from these last 90 minutes of Q&A. That would be really, really helpful. And also, I want to take the opportunity. Oh, so reflection is a strength and not a weakness. We've got continuous improvement is not just for products, but for people too. Emotional intelligence is really, really important. Trust in being yourself, key takeaway. A lot around emotional intelligence, a lot around reflection. I want to say a very big thank you to our amazing panelists for sharing all their words of wisdom around looking inwards and leadership. To all of our guests who are listening in, please save the date for the 5th of December for our 3rd episode of Future Leaders. And this episode is all going to be around connecting outwards with the company. So the opposite of looking inwards, and how to be a business partner to the other functions across the company. But that's all for now, guys. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you again to our panelists. It's been a pleasure having you on, and I wish you all a lovely morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you're based. Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.